Well, today it is Halloween. I am Brittany Page. This is the Page Perspective. Thank you so much for joining me. As you can see, I'm dressed up. I am a conspiracy theorist, and it's really going to fit with the theme of today's video, which is conspiracy theories on the right surrounding fentanyl. I don't think I'm going to wear this the whole time, so it'll just be a prop on the table, if that's okay, if we can agree to that. So, fentanyl in candy. This is the big conspiracy theory on the right now, that people are going to be putting fentanyl into your child's Halloween candy, and it is dangerous, and you need to be aware of rainbow fentanyl. And I'm gonna be talking about how this is not true, how this is not happening, how this is not a fear that you actually need to have. Now, fentanyl is an incredibly potent synthetic opioid. It is something that is serious. It is dangerous for people because it is so potent, but it is not being put in Halloween candy. And the right is spreading conspiracy theories about fentanyl. And you may be seeing a lot of headlines lately about cops that say that they came into contact with fentanyl, like passive contact with fentanyl, and they overdosed. That's not a thing, and I want to talk about that before we get to the Halloween candy. So with these increases in reports of cops saying that they were passively exposed to fentanyl and had overdoses, they all kind of fit the same narrative structure. And the police will say, okay, an officer got it on their skin or their body, or they accidentally inhaled it. And then what they will say is they had dizziness, or they were lightheaded. They had a rapid heart rate, rapid breathing, sweaty, tight in the chest. These are not symptoms of an opioid overdose. If you come across someone that has overdosed on an opioid like fentanyl, they're going to have tiny pupils, bluish fingertips, bluish skin around their lips, depending on their skin tone. They are going to have a slow breathing, not breathing. There's going to be a loss of consciousness. So what explains these cops saying that they were exposed to fentanyl, had an overdose, and then describing symptoms that are not, in fact, an opioid overdose? Well, it's probably anxiety. And that anxiety comes from the fear tactics on the right surrounding fentanyl. And I saw this most recently because it's Halloween and because the right is trying to convince parents that they need to be afraid that there's fentanyl in the Halloween candy. And I saw this with Marjorie Taylor Greene. She made an appearance on a show that I can only assume was filmed in like a basement of a doomsday prepper facility. I don't know where these people were, but they look like they're in some sort of bunker. So here is Marjorie Taylor Greene trying to convince you to be afraid of this conspiracy theory.
Okay, so Halloween's coming up, and they were talking about putting it like in Milk Duds and putting it in
Skittles,
sweet tarts, things like that.
Yep.
So that's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be stopped. I don't know the answer to it.
Right.
You do.
These are the real issues. Judy, these are the issues that matter. People need to check their children's candy. This is something you should do every single year anyways. Be very careful. Pay attention to where your kids go trick-or-treating. If you have young children, you should go with them. You should always go with them trick-or-treating. When you get back home with your kids, go through their candy. It's not just fentanyl poisoning that we're concerned about. I mean, years ago, people have done all kinds of things to kids' candy. You should just always monitor that and check what your children have from trick-or-treating. But watch your kids all the time.
So this is always a thing at Halloween. I mean, back in the day, I remember talk about razors and Tootsie Rolls, and there seems to be some new thing every single year about what is going to be in the Halloween candy. And the important thing to remember here is that drugs aren't free, so people don't want to be giving drugs away to kids in the form of candy. I've also seen on Fox News where they try to say, like, drug dealers are trying to get your kids addicted by putting fentanyl in the candy. I thought that you like overdose when you read the word fentanyl. That's what they want you to believe. But then they want you to believe that the drug dealers want to get your kids addicted. Like, I thought you die on impact as soon as it is ingested. Is that not what they actually believe? The real danger here is that they're spreading misinformation about fentanyl, which could have real consequences, including for first responders that are afraid to render aid to someone who may actually be overdosing because they're afraid of this non-existent risk of passive fentanyl exposure. And that's the real danger here with conservatives like Marjorie Taylor Greene spreading misinformation about fentanyl. They're preventing real knowledge from being dispensed that could actually benefit people in preventing drug overdose deaths. So on that note of how they are actually preventing real knowledge from being spread through spreading this misinformation, the story is a little bit more complicated, I think, than conservatives would have you believe. And yes, fentanyl is playing a role in the increase that we are seeing with overdose deaths. And the experts do not know if this is intentional co-use, meaning that they are using multiple drugs together, polysubstance use, things like a goofball, which is methamphetamine and heroin, or a speedball, which is cocaine and heroin. They don't know if it's contamination through the drug process. So it could be an intentional co-use situation, or it could be a contamination issue. Oftentimes you hear conservatives talk about contamination because it fits with a political narrative about drug traffickers and the problem with immigration and what's coming over the border. So it's important to be aware of that. But how do we actually prevent or reduce overdose deaths? Well, you consistently see that conservatives oppose the policies that would help reduce overdose deaths. Things like encouraging people not to use alone. They don't want people to use drugs at all. They say, just say no. That's not working. That hasn't worked. We want to try harm reduction because people are going to use drugs. So how can we make that safer for people who are potentially going to be exposed to fentanyl? Encouraging them not to use alone. Ensuring that they have access to Narcan or naloxone, which can reverse an overdose on opioids. Ensuring that people have access to drug testing strips, fentanyl testing strips, so that before they use a drug, they can test it to see if it is positive for fentanyl. Supervised injection sites, supporting medication-assisted treatment. There are policies that could help reduce overdose deaths, but you see consistently that conservatives oppose these things. So what I would like to see is fewer appearances from Marjorie Taylor Greene on doomsday prepper shows and more spreading of factual information, which I don't think I'll be seeing anytime soon. So this Halloween, you don't need to worry about your child's candy and whether or not there will be fentanyl in it. There are many other things to worry about, like Marjorie Taylor Greene being in a position of power. I'd love to know what you think. I don't yet have a specific YouTube number, but you can call at 657-464-7609. That is the phone number for my podcast, I Doubt It, which I host with Jesse Dollemore. And you're probably here because you were watching me host on Jesse's channel. This is my first official video for my own channel, and I'm really excited. It's going to be a journey. I don't yet know what it's going to look like completely, but I know I'm going to talk about the things that matter most to me, and that is politics, activism, psychology. I love learning from other people, so I hope that you will join me on this journey and share your thoughts with me at that phone number or even at idoubitit@dollemore.com. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Stay safe out there, and happy Halloween.